Alright guys, I'm here back with a new video, and in this video we're going to be doing something that I said I was going to do like years ago, but I didn't, mainly because I don't think this is that good of a topic, but I said I was going to do it. So we're going to wrap up my Redividing the Tribes into Heroes versus Villains series by doing it for Half-Returnee seasons, which again, doesn't really make much sense as a concept, but again, it's still a fun exercise to do. Essentially, we'll be taking the tribe of returnees from these Half-Returnee seasons and splitting them into two groups of 5 for heroes versus villains. Again, it's probably not the greatest concept, but I said I was going to do it years ago, and let's just do it. Again, so we have 3 seasons to run through: Survivor Micronesia, Survivor Caramoan, and Blood versus Water. And some of these definitely worked out better than others. So obviously we're going through seasons in chronological order, and we'll also go in order of when the players were booted. Let's start off with Survivor Micronesia, where we're starting it off with Johnny Fairplay, who is probably the easiest person to categorize here. Again, obviously Johnny Fairplay is a villain, probably the biggest villain, debatably in Survivor history up until this point. Again, very clearly a villain there. Immediately afterwards, we're moving on to Yowman, who, again, I think could be a villain if we're looking at the situation with Dreams from a realistic standpoint. Again, he is essentially trying to strong arm a homeless guy into working with him by offering him a car. Again, not ideal situation, especially when everyone had already made a deal to give Dreams the car. It's really him trying to manipulate that to benefit his game, which again, is a very villainous move. However, I feel like from the edit of Survivor Fiji, Yowman's a hero. I don't think the show ever intended to make him a villain, especially them kind of covering up that element of the Dreams deal. So again, for me, Yowman does land as a hero. Next up, we have Penner. And Penner is one that, again, I think nowadays you could debate hero or villain. However, I think at the time of Survivor Micronesia, I think you gotta go villain. The way he was portrayed in Cook Islands was pretty negatively, especially with everyone pretty much hating him. There was no one really on the island outside of Yule who liked Penner, considering how much he was talked about as a snake and a rat after he flipped at the merge. I feel like for sure he would be categorized as a villain here. Next up, we got Amy, and again, Amy, very clear villain based on how she was portrayed in Survivor Vanuatu. Again, she was shown as this ice queen, this cold, cutthroat player, even though that isn't really the way she was. But she still was someone that was looked at as the figurehead of the all-women's alliance and was shown mostly negatively across the season. So again, Amy, very clear villain here. Now I think we get to an interesting one with Eliza, where I did not 100% know where to go with Eliza. I feel like Eliza could go either way. I feel like she got positive content, she got negative content across Vanuatu. It wasn't a clear-cut thing. I think also gameplay-wise, you could say that she is a hero for her essentially being ostracized from her tribe, with people like a Twyla and Scout being confrontational with her. But at the same time, I think you can consider her a villain, considering how much everyone in her tribe hated her. So again, I think it can work both ways. I decided to go with villain just based on how the other people in this group were broken up. I try to split up the tribes, and this goes across the entire video, to where neither of these groupings had more of 3 of any particular gender. So again, I felt like Eliza fit more of the villains in this situation, so that's where I went with. Next up, we got Ozzy, and again, Ozzy's a hero. Even though I do feel like there are negative things about his portrayal in Cook Islands, and really, I think his situation with Billy Garcia, I think he comes off a bit negative there. He also gets talked about as being pretty arrogant across the season. However, again, he clearly was supposed to be the hero. He is someone that won a multitude of challenges. He's someone that was a provider for his tribe, and those are definitely things that they wanted to prop up as heroic elements of his game. So again, Ozzy is a hero here. And now the final 4 from this tribe are actually the 4 that were actually on Heroes vs. Villains. And I did end up splitting them accordingly, but there was some debate here. Again, James, I think, is clearly a hero. Again, James is someone that you can debate as a villain based on in-game reasons. Again, he was someone that was confrontational with a lot of his tribe. He definitely was not adored like the show tried to portray it as. However, again, the show definitely portrayed him as a hero. The show loved him. I think he's clearly a hero. In this situation, again, it was obviously on Heroes in Heroes versus Villains, so he's a hero here. Then we got Suri, who, again, I think just coming off of Panama is straight up a hero. To me, like, I think after Micronesia, you can bait hero or villain based on her really cutthroat gameplay on this season. But I think based on Panama, I don't think there really is much of a debate over her being a villain. I think she's just the hero, and portrayed mostly positively across the season, had this really great journey edit across the season, was portrayed as this person who got off the couch and played the game, and again, like, all positive elements. I think she's definitely a hero there. Next up, we got Amanda, and Amanda was the toughest one to me. To be honest, like, Amanda and Parvati, I debated over which one was which, but I decided to go with their eventual delineations on heroes versus villains. But again, like, Amanda and Parvati, like, don't really fit into either grouping that well. Like, I don't think Amanda is a clear-cut hero after Survivor China, but she's also not really a villain. Like, she's kind of just toneless across that season. Like, while yes, you could say she's like a heroic figure, I guess, for like winning challenges at the end and remaining mostly loyal to her group, to me, there really isn't much to say that she is a hero or a villain, but I decided to go with hero here, mainly because I feel like there are more points to point out for Parvati being a villain. And now Parvati, like, it's kind of weird because, like, I feel like her edit on Cook Islands is actually mostly positive. I don't think she gets that much negative content across that season. However, I will say that, again, like, I'm leaning towards villain for her, mostly because of how the show wanted to characterize her largely as this, like, flirty girl that manipulates all the men, and I think that is, like, looked at as a villainous trait. Like, they're trying to portray her as, like, a manipulative figure. And while it never actually comes to be on Cook Islands, I feel like that is enough to land her on the villain's side of things here, even though, again, like, I think it's kind of arbitrary. But again, that's the entire video. So yeah, I have Parvati as a villain here. That means for Survivor Micronesia here, for the heroes, we have Amanda, Sari, James, Ozzy, and Yowman. And for the villains, we have Amy, Eliza, Johnny Fairplay, Parvati, and Penner. And now let's jump forward 10 seasons to the next fans versus favorites. We do have Survivor Karamoan, where I feel like this one was kind of tough, where obviously Micronesia, I felt like was pretty standard. Like, this one definitely has a lot more haziness, though it did have some people that were obvious locks. And starting off with probably the most hazy of the bunch, we do have Francesca. And Francesca, like, didn't really get much positive or negative content across her season. She was mostly toneless, and considering a certain person she had animosity with is a very clear villain, I would debate putting her on the Heroes Tribe. However, at the same time, I feel like if I was production, the entire reason you cast Francesca is to have her have conflict with that certain person. And considering that person's in the Villains Tribe, screw it. We're putting Francesca on the Villains Tribe too. Why not? Next up, we have Brandon Hance. And this is a pretty difficult one, mainly because I think it's a debate between this and a certain other person who are both people who have heroic and villainous elements to their original seasons. And I think after Karamoan, obviously you'd have Brandon as a villain. Like, that's not even a question. However, I think before it, I leaned towards hero. And I decided to go with Brandon as a hero here, mainly because obviously Russell is a massive villain. And I feel like something production would like to prop up is this element of, oh, your uncle was a villain, how's it feel for you to be a hero? And that sort of thing with Brandon Hance here. And especially because, like, on South Pacific, a lot of his storyline is him trying to redeem his family for what Russell did, and I feel like that is, like, kind of a heroic element. And even though there are negative things across the season, especially of, like, how he handles the Michaela situation and the fact that he is still confrontational at points, I do feel like at the end of the day it's enough to land him as a hero for me. Next up, we're moving on to Corinne, who is probably the easiest one to land as a villain. Again, like, she didn't really get much positive content across Gabon, but did get a decent amount of negative content, and also she's most known for her speech to Sugar, which is obviously a massive villainous moment. Again, like, Corinne's a very clear villain here. Next up, another one of the bigger villains on the tribe here, we do have Philip. And again, Philip for me, clear villain. Again, like, almost all of his content across the entire season of Redemption Island was all negative. He was a very confrontational figure. Again, like, really no positive element of his edit there. Very clear villain to me. I follow that up with a very clear hero in Malcolm. And again, Malcolm, while there were negative elements here and there, again, very clearly he was portrayed as a hero. Again, he definitely was someone that the producers wanted people to like. And again, there's not really a question there. Very clear hero to me. Next up, we got Andrea, and Andrea is one of these people that doesn't really necessarily fit into either, but I think she certainly fits into hero much more than villain. Now, I think after Karamoan, I think you could probably really go either way, but I think after only Redemption Island, I think she's more so a hero, considering, like, she actually gets a pretty positive edit on Redemption Island. Like, she gets a lot of positivity across that season. And while there is like maybe a sprinkle of negativity from her like taking out Matt the second time, I do feel like Andrea's edit is mostly positive, and considering she also feels like the type of person that would be a hero on Survivor, kind of in the Amanda mold of a strong, athletic, competent, all-around player, I do feel like Andrea is a pretty clear hero for me here. Next up, we got Brenda, and again, Brenda after Nicaragua is, again, a very clear villain. Portrayed as someone that was, like, dominating the tribe, along with Sash on Nicaragua, and also was portrayed as this person that was manipulating men. Again, this sort of like Parvati-esque thing, and again, that's something that I feel like production would lean towards villainous. So again, pretty easy one there. Next up, we got Eric. And Eric, again, like for me, isn't necessarily a clear-cut hero, but also just isn't a villain. So I feel like he's pretty easily a hero. And also, I mean, I think the element of like him giving up his immunity necklace, I feel like that's something that they would look at as heroic, as him being tricked by other people and him not being duplicitous because of that. He's also someone that was good in challenges, was a big underdog at the end. Again, for me, Eric's pretty clearly a hero here. Next up, we got Dawn. Again, pretty clear hero here, mainly because like she's not a villain. Now again, after this season, I think you could debate the two, but before this, just from South Pacific, again, there's nothing you could say for Dawn to be a villain. I'm really in South Pacific, she was just this like mom figure that had this good relationship with Cochran and was pretty decent in challenges, and like I mean, like she was a overall mostly positive figure on South Pacific. So I mean, again, pretty clear hero here. And the last person, again, was pretty tough to put into one, but we do have Cochran. Again, like for me, I think there's heroic and villainous aspects for Cochran. Again, kind of similar to Eliza, where like the heroic elements are the fact that he was picked on by his original tribe and just have this like growth arc over the course of that season. However, the villainous aspects are the fact that he was hated by his tribe and does end up flipping on his entire tribe. And again, for me, it came down to him or Brandon. Again, I obviously put Brandon on heroes, so I did end up landing Cochran on villains. Where again, like I feel like this one could have gone either way, and I feel like post Caramoan, again, for sure Cochran would be a hero. However, I think before that, to me, it's kind of arbitrary which one he lands on. So again, I felt like Brandon had a more interesting story for being on the Heroes Tribe. So again, I landed Cochran on the villains. So with Survivor Caramoan, for the Heroes Tribe, I did put Andrea, Brandon Hance, Dawn, Eric, and Malcolm. And for the Villains Tribe, I put Brenda, Cochran, Corinne, Francesca, and Philip. And finally, we're moving on to Survivor Blood versus Water, which I will say is the biggest train wreck on this list. Like, this tribe simply does not break well into heroes versus villains. Like, to me, I feel like Blood vs. Water was just a really random grouping of returnees, and to me, this really solidifies that. Like, a lot of these people are not clear heroes or villains. Like, I think there's a lot of arbitrary placements here, and again, I had to put them into one of the two, so I did, but again, like, this is one that just, like, doesn't make sense, but whatever. And also with placements of Blood vs. Water, it's kind of weird because of Redemption Island and everything, but whatever, let's go through it anyway. So first up, we're going to be talking about Rupert, who is the easiest one to put. He's obviously a hero. Again, was a hero on Heroes vs. Villains, obviously a massive hero in the grand scheme of things for the show. And again, yes, there are some villainous things you can point out, but again, for sure, a hero here. Next up, we got Colton. Very clear villain. Obviously, one of the biggest villains up until this point in Survivor history. Was so villainous to the point where they didn't feel comfortable bringing him back for Philippines because of how hated he was. So again, very clear villain here. Then we get to Candace, and this one's interesting because obviously she was on Heroes vs. Villains as a hero. However, even there, her being a hero was more so dictated by the fact that they had too many Micronesia people as heroes, so they decided to swap her and Parvati, and like, I think after Heroes vs. Villains, I think you would have to solidly put her as a villain. Again, she literally flipped against her entire hero tribe. You also have this like animosity between her and Rupert because of her flipping on the hero tribe. And while obviously it would be interesting to see her and Rupert on the same tribe together, I do feel like at the same time, I think that even more solidifies her as a villain. She ends up as a villain here. Next up, we got Kat. And again, like, I don't think Kat fits into either that well. She's not really a heroic figure necessarily, but she's also not a villain. So I decided to go with hero, mostly because like at least she does have that storyline of her needing surgery and her being this like sympathetic figure by the end of the season. Again, she never really comes off as negatively in terms of like villainous aspects of her. So again, like I think she comes off as a likable enough figure to have her as a hero. Next up, we have Aris. It's like, again, to me, Aris doesn't fit in either. Like, this is one that, like, this is the most arbitrary of the bunch. To me, Aris and someone else we'll be talking about, obviously, were contention for the last spot on the heroes or villains. And I actually went with Aris as a villain. Now, I don't think either works. Now, I think you could say he's a hero because he won. He was like okay in challenges, I guess. However, his rivalry with Terry, where obviously that was like the major rivalry of Survivor Panama. And I feel like Terry was very clearly supposed to be the hero of that season. And through that, I decided to put Aris as the villain. Again, does it matter? Not really, because it doesn't really work if I'm being honest, but whatever. I decided to put him as a villain. That's what I did here. Next up, we got Laura Moret. And again, it doesn't work. Really just due to how the cards have been playing out. Like, I mean, Laura's a villain, I guess. I was actually surprised. I did look at the Edgic chart. It actually turned out Laura got a decent amount of negativity. On Samoa, I actually kind of forgot about that. So, I mean, I guess she's a villain. Which is also kind of weird because, like, literally what I just explained with the Aris and Terry rivalry makes no sense here when it comes to the Russell-Laura rivalry, where Russell is the clear villain. So, like, wouldn't that mean that Laura is the hero? But then I guess you could say the same thing about the Laura-Shambo rivalry, where I guess Shambo's the hero and Laura is the villain. So, again, it doesn't matter. But I guess Laura's a villain here, I guess. Next up, we got Tina, and Tina's a hero, I guess. I mean, again, like, I feel like she's a hero in the sense that she was working alongside Colby, who was a massive hero at the time. She was someone who wanted the good people to win in Australian Outback. I guess that's good enough. I guess she's a hero. Next up, we have Jervis. And again, Jervis to me is the one that I debated with Aris, where, like, I didn't know where to go Jervis. Like, I think now I would actually lean towards Jervis being a villain, largely because, like, Jervis is like this pretty confrontational figure, with him being really cocky after challenges and him getting the fights at Tribal. It's like, I feel like I would probably lean towards Jervis being a villain now. However, I feel like at the time of Borneo, I don't think that's the way he was portrayed. Now, I do think there is probably some, like, element of, like, you could say he's a villain, especially considering the entire Joel situation, which is obviously a really bad look there. However, I'm looking at the Edgic chart for Borneo. Like, Jervis was portrayed pretty positively. Mind you, every member of Pagong was portrayed positively. But, like, I feel like at the time of Borneo, like, even then, like, Jervis wasn't, like, looked at as this, like, massive misogynist for his, like, cow comment. Like, instead, like, he was definitely looked at more positively, I feel like. Again, it felt like Joel took the brunt of that, and Jervis was just kind of looked at more positively. So again, like, really it's arbitrary either way, but I did go Jervis being a hero, mostly because, again, I feel like the edit backs him up as a hero more so than it did with Aris being more so toneless, with Jervis being a lot more positive along the way, and them even covering up some of his negativity. Next up, we have Monica, and again, Monica's definitely a hero here. Like, again, there's not really anything to really classify her as a villain. Like, there's nothing villainous that she does across her season. She's never portrayed negatively. She's really portrayed in a very positive light, where she's portrayed as, like, one of the strongest people on her tribe and is voted out despite that. Again, very clear hero to me. And finally, we do have Tyson, who, again, was on Heroes vs. Villains, was a villain there. Didn't really do much to change that opinion. I feel like he's still probably a villain. So again, pretty clear cut one there. But there we go. I mean, that is blood versus water. So again, for the Heroes tribe, we have Jervis, I guess. Kat, I guess. Monica, we have Rupert, and we have Tina. And then for the villains, we have Horace, I guess. We have Candace, Colton, Laura Moret, I guess, and Tyson. Again, this is probably the most arbitrary breakdown that I've done out of the ones that I have done, but whatever. But that is the video. I mean, that is every returnee tribe from a half-returnee season being split into heroes versus villains based on their edit from the previous season. Again, this video really doesn't matter. Like, I really just did this because I said I was going to do it. And to be fair, like, I think it's fun to talk through how people were portrayed based on their edits. And, like, beyond this, like, I wouldn't mind doing similar style of Redividing the Tribes sort of videos, but for obviously different themes. But this is the end of the Heroes vs. Villains series, so there we go. Thank you for watching.